I never thought a single message could destroy my marriage. It was past midnight when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Half asleep, I reached for it only for Jake to grab it first. His eyes scanned the screen, his face turning pale. "You still talk to him?" he asked, his voice shaking. I looked at the message, my heart stopping. "I miss you." I knew, in that moment, everything was about to fall apart. I never meant to hurt Sammy. When we got married 5 years ago, I truly believed we had something unbreakable. He was my best friend, the kind of man who remembered my coffee order, left little notes on the fridge, and kissed my forehead every morning before work. Life with him was simple, steady, safe. But over time, something changed. The passion that once made my heart race slowly faded into routine. Our late-night talks turned into passing conversations. Date nights became something we only did when we had time, which was never. I told myself this was just what happens in marriage, that love eventually settles into something quieter. But deep down, I missed feeling wanted. Then one day, Eric reached out. It was just a simple message, asterisk, "Hey, how have you been?" Asterisk, but it hit me in a way I didn't expect. Eric wasn't just anyone. He was my past, the person I once thought I'd spend my life with before everything fell apart. Seeing his name on my phone made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: excitement. At first, I told myself it was harmless. A friendly conversation, nothing more. But as days turned into weeks, the messages became longer, deeper. He remembered things about me that Sammy had long stopped noticing. The way I twisted my hair when I was thinking. The songs I used to play on repeat. The way I hated sleeping with socks on. And then one night, he sent a message that changed everything. "I miss you." I should have ignored it. I should have deleted it. But instead, I just stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Because the worst part, I missed him too. I told myself it was just a message, nothing more. But the way my heart raced every time Eric's name appeared on my phone told me otherwise. What started as casual catching up slowly turned into something else, something dangerous. Sammy began to notice. At first, it was subtle. The way I kept my phone close, how I smiled at the screen a little too often. I started staying up later, texting long after he had gone to sleep. When he asked who I was talking to, I would shrug it off. Just an old friend. He didn't push, but the way his eyes lingered on me told me he wasn't convinced. The more I talked to Eric, the more I craved his attention. He made me feel seen, like I was still the person I used to be before marriage turned me into just a wife. I told him about my life, my frustrations, the way Sammy and I barely spoke anymore. And Eric listened, really listened. Unlike Sammy, who barely looked up from his phone during dinner. One evening, as I was texting Eric, I felt Sammy watching me. His voice was calm, too calm. "Who keeps texting you this late?" I forced a smile. "Jen from work." A lie. He nodded slowly, but I could see the tension in his jaw. That night, I turned my phone on silent. Not because I was afraid of getting caught, but because I didn't want to feel guilty when I heard Eric's name pop up again. The distance between Sammy and me grew. Conversations felt forced, and his touch, once familiar and comforting, now felt foreign. I started making excuses to be alone, taking longer grocery trips, spending extra time at the gym, anywhere I could steal a few moments to talk to Eric. And every time I felt guilt creeping in, Eric would say something that pulled me right back in. "I don't think I ever stopped loving you, Jessica." That night, I lay in bed next to Sammy, my heart pounding. He was asleep, unaware of the storm building between us. My phone was in my hand, Eric's message staring back at me. "I miss you." I hesitated, then typed back 3 words I could never take back. "I miss you too." I told myself that texting wasn't cheating, that as long as I didn't cross the line physically, it wasn't real. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The late-night conversations, the way my heart skipped a beat when Eric texted, the way I checked my phone first thing in the morning, It all meant something. Something I wasn't ready to admit. I started noticing the distance between us. He'd reach for my hand while we watched TV, but I'd pull away, pretending I needed to check something on my phone. He kissed me goodbye in the mornings, but I barely registered it. My mind was somewhere else with someone else. The guilt was there, sitting heavy in my chest, but every time I talked to Eric, it faded, at least for a little while. Then, one night, Eric called. I hesitated before answering, my heart pounding. Hey. Hey yourself, he said, his voice smooth and familiar. I needed to hear your voice. I closed my eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. Eric, we can't. Then why do you keep talking to me? Silence. I had no answer. Just meet me, he said. One time, just to talk. Every rational thought in my mind told me to say no. But the loneliness, the emptiness I had been feeling for months, screamed louder. Where? That one word sealed my fate. The next day, I found myself in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, parked outside a quiet cafe on the other side of town. My stomach was in knots, my palms sweaty. I could still turn back. I could still pretend this never happened. But when I saw Eric through the window, waiting for me, all hesitation melted away. Walking inside, it felt like time rewound itself. He looked the same, confident, charming, the kind of man who knew exactly how to pull me in. The moment I sat down, he reached for my hand across the table. I've missed you, Jessica. I should have pulled away. I should have left. But instead, I let him hold my hand, let myself remember how it felt to be wanted. We talked for hours, like no time had passed at all. He made me laugh, made me feel like I was more than just a wife stuck in a routine. And then, when it was time to leave, he leaned in, his lips inches from mine. Tell me to stop, he whispered. I didn't. The kiss was soft, hesitant at first, but the moment our lips met, it was like something inside me snapped. A rush of emotion, of need, of something I had buried for too long. I melted into him, forgetting everything else. When I finally pulled away, breathless and dizzy, reality came crashing back. I have to go, I whispered, grabbing my bag and rushing out before I could make another mistake. But it was already too late. Because the moment I kissed Eric, I knew there was no going back. I told myself it was just a mistake, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way Eric held me, the way his lips felt against mine. I tried to act normal, but everything with I felt different now. His touch felt foreign, his presence like a reminder of what I had done. The guilt came in waves, but it wasn't enough to stop me. Eric became my escape. The second time we met, I didn't hesitate. This time, there was no guilt holding me back. The moment I stepped into his arms, I knew I was past the point of no return. One time turned into two, then three, then more than I could count. I told myself I could keep my two lives separate, but deep down, I knew the truth. Lies always have a way of catching up. It happened on a night like any other. I had spent hours with Eric, wrapped up in the world we had created. When I walked through the front door, I knew something was wrong. The house was too quiet, too still. I was sitting on the couch, his face unreadable, his phone in his hand. My heart pounded. Something in his expression sent a chill down my spine. Where were you? His voice was calm, but there was something sharp underneath. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Out with Jen, I lied, setting my purse down. He didn't move, just nodded slowly. That's funny, he said, his fingers tightening around the phone. My stomach twisted. Something was very, very wrong. He turned the phone around and my world shattered. There on the screen was a picture, me, in Eric's arms, his lips on mine. Time froze. My chest tightened, my breath caught in my throat. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Try again, I said, his voice like ice. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Who sent you that? I finally managed to whisper, his jaw clenched. Does it matter? His voice was sharp, cutting through me like a knife. "How long, Jessica?" My body went cold. My hands trembled. I wanted to lie, but it was pointless. He already knew. My throat tightened. "A few months." The words felt like poison. Silence stretched between us, thick with everything left unsaid. He stood up slowly, his movements controlled but tense. His hands curled into fists, but he didn't yell. He didn't throw accusations. He just stared at me, his face a mix of pain and something worse, disappointment. I wished he would scream, anything to fill the unbearable silence. Instead, he asked the one question I couldn't answer. "Was it worth it?" His voice was hollow, empty. I wanted to say no, that I regretted everything, but the truth was I didn't know. I had chased something I thought I needed, but at what cost? My throat felt dry. My hands clenched at my sides. "I don't know," I whispered. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew there was no going back. He let out a slow breath, nodding like he finally understood something. Then, without another word, he walked past me and out the door. I stood there, frozen, unable to move. The weight of what I had done settled on me all at once. My marriage was over. Not with a fight, not with a dramatic explosion. Just like that, with quiet, final steps, Sammy was gone. The silence after Sammy left was deafening. I stood frozen, staring at the door, half expecting him to come back. To yell, to demand an explanation, to do something. But he didn't. He just walked away, and that was worse than any screaming match. He was done. I had ruined everything. I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. My phone buzzed, and for a moment I hoped it was him. But it was Eric. "Thinking about you." My stomach twisted. Just days ago, those words would have made my heart race. Now they just made me feel sick. I tossed the phone onto the coffee table, burying my face in my hands. I had made my choice, but why did it feel so wrong? The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. Sammy hadn't come back. His side of the bed was untouched, his toothbrush missing from the bathroom counter. The sight of that small, empty space hit me harder than I expected. He had always been so meticulous, never leaving things out of place. Now, it was like he had erased himself from our home overnight. I called him, straight to voicemail. I texted. No response. The realization settled in, he wasn't coming back, at least not right now. My chest tightened, panic setting in. I had been so sure I could handle this, that I could balance both parts of my life. But standing in the wreckage, I realized I had been lying to myself all along. Days passed, then a week. I heard from mutual friends that Sammy had moved in with his brother. He wasn't talking about what happened, but everyone knew. The looks I got when I ran into people at the grocery store, the whispers when I walked past, they all knew. The shame was suffocating. Eric, on the other hand, was still waiting. He kept texting, kept calling. "We can finally be together now." The words felt hollow. I had spent months chasing the idea of him, the idea of something exciting, something new. But now that I had lost everything, I realized he wasn't what I wanted. He was just an escape. One night, I found myself standing outside Sammy's brother's apartment. My hands trembled as I knocked on the door. When it opened, Sammy stood there, his eyes empty, tired. "Jessica," he said, his voice flat. "I messed up," I whispered, my throat tight. He sighed, rubbing his face. "Yeah, you did." I swallowed hard. "Can we fix this?" He studied me for a long time, then shook his head. "I don't know." And that was the moment I realized. Some mistakes can't be undone. The days after that conversation with Sammy felt like a blur. I went home to an empty house, but it didn't feel like home anymore. Everywhere I looked, I saw the remnants of a life I had destroyed. The framed wedding photo on the wall, the coffee mug he used every morning, the space in the closet where his clothes used to be. It was all a reminder of what I had lost. For weeks, I tried to convince myself that things could still be fixed. That if I gave him time, if I showed him how sorry I was, he would come back. But deep down, I knew the truth. Some betrayals cut too deep. Some wounds don't heal. I had shattered the trust between us, and no amount of apologies could undo that. Eric kept reaching out, but I ignored him. He wasn't what I wanted anymore. He never had been. I had used him as a way to escape the cracks in my marriage instead of facing them. And now that I had nothing left, I finally understood. Love isn't about chasing excitement. It's about choosing someone every single day, even when it's hard, even when things feel ordinary. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. My fingers hovered over Sammy I's contact. I wanted to call him to say something, anything. But what could I say? I miss you? That wasn't enough. I still love you. That wouldn't change what I had done. In the end, I set my phone down and walked away. The hardest part of losing someone isn't the silence they leave behind. It's knowing they're still out there, living their life, just without you in it. I had been selfish, reckless, blind to what I had in front of me. And now I had to live with the consequences. People say time heals all wounds, but I don't think that's true. Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. Sammy I moved on. Eventually, so did I, but no matter how much time passed, I never forgot the look in his eyes that night, the moment he realized he could never trust me again. And the worst part, neither could I. What would you do if you were in Sammy I's place? Could you ever forgive a betrayal like this, or is trust broken forever once it's lost? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more shocking and emotional real-life betrayals. And trust me, our next story, it's even more intense. Stay tuned.